to start recording. Okay, and I'm actually going to, so let me go ahead and start this from the beginning. Okay. As a nonpartisan lobbying group, Citizen Climate Lobby has spent a lot of time identifying 7 agreements that everybody follows when we come together to volunteer. Now, climate change is very complex. We know that. And we also know that working with a diverse set of people is equally complex. CCL has put in a lot of thought of making meaningful agreements with some teeth to foster healthy group dynamics and making sure that when we show up to events, we feel safe. And that's what I'm going to go through today. I wanted people to know, even if they weren't involved with CCL, some of the things CCL is doing, both to let them know a little bit about CCL, and because I think a lot of these agreements are ones that are useful in other groups we participate in. So let's get to the agreements. You may have seen the social ready media thing that I put out to let people know about this particular event. And you may have seen these 7 words. Those aren't the agreements. They are just little hints at what the agreements are. I wanted to come up with as short of a word I could that got the real essence of the longer statement that CCL has. And I'm going to very briefly now go through those 7 statements. We're going to talk about them more in my presentation. So the first one, we're all connected. The second one, remain respectful in how we speak and act. Lead with curiosity, not judgment. We foster open dialogue. We work well across differences. We look out for one another. We follow the rules of the venue or the platform that we're on. After I go through them, these agreements are wonderful. They're laudable. They are things that we should all be working towards doing. But agreements without a way of enforcing feel a lot like thoughts and prayers. So CCL has a mechanism that if people fall too short and are being are being disruptive, there are steps that can be taken. There are things, and we're going to get into that. And then I want to end with their accountability statement because it's really thought out. They spent a lot of time on this, and CCL is not a huge organization with a lot of money. They do have money. They do pay their staff, but we're not talking about, some CEO, as far as I can tell, getting really rich. So the fact that they spent time for this says a lot about the organization that's had to be, if anything, leaner in the last few years because of the reality of the world we live in. They've had to be really strategic in every resource they have. Okay, so let's first start with connected. Well, people that come to our meetings, I would say that I would hazard the guess that most of us already have as a core value being connected. I'm going to talk about me personally when I talk about connected. When I talk about connected, I actually do mean to everything. I mean humans, of course. But I also mean other living things, and I actually do mean, and it's going to sound silly, the phone that I have. You know me. I know Maka knows me, and Bart, you've had a chance to kind of know me a bit. I am both a spiritual person and a huge nerd. So I get into quantum physics, and I don't mean people who don't know about quantum physics. I watch PBS Space Time. There is a very well known, I call her my grumpy scientist, who likes to point out how little science is being done, who talks about quantum physics. But at the quantum level, we really are all connected because everything's made of quantum particles. And in my spiritual view, that is also spiritual. It is enough to say, I really do have a connection to the book and the phone. And for me personally, I therefore have a responsibility, for lack of a better word, to try to use them in a way that makes sure that there'll be more phones. Okay, more birds, more. I'd rather have more birds and trees, but you get the point. Now, of course, when citizen climate lobby is talking about they're talking about relationships among people. But I think I'm not probably the only person with an earth based spiritual action, who sees the earth as sacred, who has a very animistic viewpoint. That's not unusual. So I think that we are actually very compatible with this already. And I was really happy to see that this is the very first agreement CCL has. The next one they have is respect. And first thing I want to say about respect is it's a two-way street. CCL really is a nonpartisan group. As my role as action team leader, I have interacted with conservatives, which is not something I normally do. And you know something? I really like them. I don't agree, obviously, with everything they say, but I respected them and they respected me. It's reciprocal. We respect each other. That doesn't mean we agree. We may have irrevocable things that cannot be worked through. There may just be a core value I hold that's incompatible with somebody else's core value, but we're here to work. We're here because we see the earth as being sacred, and we're here, and so are other people as volunteers. So we're going to come from a place of respect and expect it back. They don't say that part about respecting it back, but respect, it's really important. It's a two-way street. So the CCL puts this one as lead with curiosity, not judgment. On my faith team, the amazing Catholic person said this better, and I'm going to quote them. And they said, better yet, lead with inquiry. And their point was that inquiry is an action. So curiosity, is a good thing. I mean, this is a great agreement, but inquiry is an actual action. And that's about if you run into somebody who has a different viewpoint, ask, how did they come to that viewpoint? What led them to that place? This is, again, not about necessarily agreeing with them, but being able to see what led somebody to something can sometimes at least allow you to understand why they believe that, especially when you don't agree. I know that's true with me. I know I've done a lot of interfaith. I know that Maka's done a lot of interfaith. And this is one thing you find out in interfaith a lot, that you're not going to agree, but you really, by doing this active listening, you get to know somebody's story and you really can kind of like walking in their shoes. Well, we already foster open dialogue. I think our communities are especially good at this, given our backgrounds. And I was, again, really glad to see this. This is about, again, we want different perspectives at CCL. It's really important that we don't get caught in little echo chambers. And especially today with social media, it's easier than ever to be caught in a dialogue. Our whole media ecosystem, they don't talk about this. This is me talking about this. Our whole media ecosystem basically has algorithms that feed you what you like. I'm going to just keep it at that. I'm going to keep this very simple. That's a real thing. So what does that mean? One of the reasons we see less dialogue is we're being encouraged to pick sides. And at CCL, we want to work together because we know at the end of the day that climate change affects everybody. So it's important that we get those different perspectives, because here's the thing. When you break out of your own little box, sometimes you see something new that you didn't think of, and it's better. Sometimes not. But we want people to participate. Now, how you participate is really an individual thing. And CCL has a lot of ways for people to participate. A lot of people are not comfortable being a speaker. A lot of people, there are people that are much more comfortable being that quiet person who sits in the back and gets everything done. The person doing the doodling, who nonetheless is putting out. What you're not seeing is that person's typing, or maybe they're drawing. They're doing something that is going to move things, and we want those people to feel safe too. Everyone knows me. I'm not shy, but it's important that I make it clear that I'm just another role in this organization. People being quiet and doing things are maybe even probably doing more than me, and they're just as important. Everybody's participating, and that's what we want. I like the way this is put. I think this wording is very deliberate, not just work across differences. I mean, that's already can be a challenging goal depending on, backgrounds and stuff, but work well across differences. That's a whole other agreement to try for. That means that, again, we know we're working with people with different experiences and viewpoints. And not only do we want to listen, we want to remain mindful of how our words and actions land. We're all going to mess this up. I mess this up. Everyone is. This is not about trying to be perfect about this. This is noticing you said something because, where you come from, like I come from a very huggy Jewish background, and I tend to want, my first reaction is to want to hug people because that's the culture I was brought up with. It's a very touchy, Italians and Jews were very much in your face. It's very cultural. But so sometimes my actions can be can hurt somebody, not because they're wrong, but because of their culture. So try to watch for body language. If you do, be mindful. If you are, try to find out. Again, this is another chance where you can find out what is appropriate for that person. You might learn a bit about their culture. You might learn about their background. It's important. This is all about creating a safe space. Volunteering should be fun. It should be something we look forward to. Well, nothing makes it less fun than feeling like you're attacked verbally or physically or something inappropriate. And I love that CCL has these agreements that allow us to create the space where when we show up, we know it's safe because we know they're there. We're going to be supportive and look out for each other. And, as people who do eco activism, we're very aware that burnout's a real thing. So maybe someone's having a bad day. But here's the thing. As a volunteer, you may not be the person that's best to deal with this. We would rather people be safe. Your safety, your comfort is more important to those of us who volunteer at a little higher level at CCL. You are coming, you're volunteering, you're giving your precious time. The last thing you really need to do is necessarily deal with someone who's not acting in a way we'd like them to. So we want to encourage you to go to a volunteer leader or staff meeting. Often, not always, but often they've had, especially the staff members here have had a lot of training. I know as a volunteer leader, I've had a lot of training, some of it from CCL, some of it outside. Like in my interfaith work, we actually took classes in de-escalation. So that, for example, is something I bring to CCL. I know those techniques. And I'm not unique in the volunteer leaders. The faith leaders I interact with always impress me. And the other volunteer leaders, they are all impressive and they all have skills. So feel free. They stepped up, talk to them. Go have a nice cup of tea, go do something fun. We want you to feel really great about this. Okay, here's the one where it starts to get maybe a little challenging for a lot of people in our communities. A lot of our communities, well, I'm just going to say my experience, which is we're much more into guidelines than hard, fast rules. We tend, our core, at least the communities I'm with, value very much personal sovereignty. It's a core value of so many of the groups I hang around with, those core values. However, when we come together, whether it's in a coven, a fair, or a volunteer thing in CCL, we're with other people. And here's the thing, clear rules make clear boundaries, which make safe spaces. So when we come together, we are going to respect the guidelines of the place we're at. That doesn't mean we have to blindly, if we see something and we think it's draconian, as long as it's not disruptive, again, we should ask. Like, we may find out that the place that we're at, the venue, imposed these. I remember not in CCL, but I remember when I was presenting for the Parliament of World Religions that I was at the Parliament and I had made these really beautiful signs to put up as part of my presentation to put up on the walls. And the day before I find out we can't put up anything on the walls. And that was something the convention center had, basically said. So sometimes the rules are imposed by the venues. But even knowing that gives you empathy. CCL is not imposing these just to impose them. These guidelines, I've been to CCL events, Bart certainly has. The guidelines make sense. And they really are there to support people to engage safely and to have fun. CCL has a lot of fun, which is another thing I love about CCL. I know it's getting off topics. So those are the 7 agreements. I have to say, as your action team leader, as the action team leader of the Earth-based spiritual action team, I am so proud and so happy to say I have never once at one of our meetings had to deal with somebody who was not already sticking to these agreements. And I think that says something about our communities and the kind of people who both see the earth as sacred and come to these meetings. So many of us are already ahead of the curve on these kind of things. So, I'm really proud of that. I really am. On the other, I also, though, want to point out that CCL really does have, and then later on, I'm going to put some links. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm presenting, and I will be putting links to to some of these things up there, and I just want to let you know that. Again, I said, though, agreements are important, rules are important for safe space, but they're not enough. And CCL is really serious about this to the point that they have a well thought out anti-harassment policy. Now, it has things that I think we would expect. Like, okay, here's the one that unwelcome sexual comments. I think we all have strong opinions on that one, that's not appropriate. No sexual comment that's unwelcome. Consent is a big thing in all of our, communities. We're not going to let people disrupt a meeting. No bullying, no microaggressions, no personal characteristic, nothing about the person. Now, there's one in here that might surprise people at first, or you might innocently not even think about it if you go to a CCL event. And that's the taking of photos and recording and screenshots of people without permission. But I want to give an example that's not CCL, because I give the examples I've seen, but is relevant. And that's, again, from the Parliament of World Religions. I remember being at a Parliament of World Religions, and the indigenous people had this amazingly beautiful displays. Okay, Maka wants to talk, so I'm gonna let Maka and we'll record that. I'm also keeping track of the time. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully I could just recognize you without unmuting. So go ahead and talk, Maka.
I was just going to say what you mentioned about about taking photos. It says when privacy is expected.
That's right.
So in public things, it's not.
That's
I
right.
think
In
that's
public. No,
important.
thank you. Thank you for reinforcing that. Thank you for the when privacy is expected is important here. Obviously, if you're out in the middle of the streets, you're in a public venue, you should expect photos. No, thank you for bringing that up. Thank you. But there are places in CCL where we would expect more privacy, like our Zoom meetings. And the thing I'm talking about at the Parliament, thank you for emphasizing the privacy. I really appreciate that. So the thing at the Parliament, just really quickly, is we were in a space where privacy was expected. Uh, that the indigenous people had set something up, they had control of the space. And, the first thing a lot of people wanted to take pictures. I asked. And because I'm well aware that, given my own background, I know that there's objects that people don't want photographed because in the worldview or in the tradition, you don't photograph it. It's considered disrespectful. Is considered because of the worldview, that object taking a photograph of it is just considered wrong. So, in the particular thing, it was basically they had teepees set up and they did not want pictures of teepees being, and even though it was, now in this case, you're correct. In CCL, it's only if privacy is expected. But I thought that that was relevant because it might surprise you and you might not even know that privacy is expected. So ask. And you should know, but sometimes, people are human and they forget to make it clear that this is a private, event. Or like the Zoom meetings, is it private? Well, it's kind of a gray area. I share or link to anybody. So on some level it's public and on some level it's private. So I think the way to read this is err on the side of caution. And thank you for bringing up, yes, privacy. If it's public, if you're out in the middle of the street, certainly you can do that. But I thought that that was interesting that they, included that. Excellent point. So how do we report it? If something happens, if you witness something, like I said, we don't necessarily even want you taking care of it. Maybe you're comfortable with that, maybe you're not. But there's many ways to report if something happens. If there's unacceptable behavior, I'm aware of a person of color in CCL who somebody was doing things that was not appropriate. They were touching their hair. There was some microaggression going on. And, the person, and there was another place that I'm aware of a situation with the same colored person was in a public event, and the hotel staff was not treating that person in the way that was appropriate for that person. So, in this case, I would love for them to know they have options for afterwards, so they don't make the situation worse, for reporting this. The first two people, they are paid. I have worked, and I'm going to mispronounce, I'm sure, Karina's name, but she's amazing. She is the vice president of people and culture here at CCL. She is the person that all us faith action team leaders, Karina is the one that works with us. And she is a person of color. She is absolutely passionate about this stuff. And she is something personally I would feel comfortable with, but you don't have to be. If none of these people are people, if you don't want to send to a specific person, I will be putting a link. You can submit an anonymous report. You're going to get back an acknowledgement in 48 hours so you know it was seen. Now, being around, I don't expect it to be handled that quickly because these things take time and nuance and they can be tricky. But I love that CCL is going to let us know we have been seen. That's super important right there. Just that it knows that people who are doing this need to know they've been seen and it's being heard and being thought about. And Steps, if necessary, will be taken care of. Speaking of steps that will be taken care of, the accountability part. See, like I said, in order to create a safe space for everyone, you got to take these seriously. So, CCL reserves the right to ask somebody to leave a meeting if they need to. Depending on the situation, they are going to restrict people from CCL meetings, events, and activities if it gets that bad. And if it gets bad enough, there's other things that they're willing to do. I will be putting a link to the whole non-harassment and non-discrimination policy in case people want to see that. I'll be putting it, and when I put this on YouTube, I will be putting the link to the non-harassment. I, will not be putting the emails out there, though they'll be in the slides. So that is pretty much what I've got. I'm going to go ahead and stop. I'm going to basically very quickly. I think we just got a couple more minutes. Yes. Oh, look at me being right on time. I just want to let people know that next time I'm going to stop recording first. There we go.